Mara prayed and formed a protective circle around them. They got Victor to the medical wing, and that is when Mara saw how bad it really was. Blood everywhere, his breathing shallow and wrong. The doctor barked orders and someone tried to pull Mara away, but she fought like a wild thing. "I'm his wife, I stay. The surgery took hours." Mara stood against the wall, covered in her husband's blood, one hand pressed to her stomach where their child grew, and prayed to a god she wasn't entirely sure existed. When it was over, the doctor's face was grim. "He's stable, but he's not waking up. Could be hours, could be days. He will wake up," Mara said. With absolute certainty, because the alternative was unthinkable. But days passed, and Victor remained lost in whatever darkness held him. The estate became a fortress under siege. Rival factions smelled weakness, and the lieutenants circled like sharks, arguing about who had authority to lead. Mara sat by Victor's bedside, held his unresponsive hand, and whispered everything she'd never let herself say out loud. "I love you. I'm sorry I didn't say it before. Please come back. Our baby needs you. I need you." On the third day, the lieutenants came to her. "Mrs. Kang, we need decisions. The harbor deal, the federal situation, the territories. Handle it," she said without looking away from Victor's face. "With respect, you're just the wife. You don't have authority." Something inside Mara snapped. She stood, turned, and looked at these men who had served this family for decades. "I'm not just the wife. I'm the one who spoke the family words. I'm the one the chairman calls his spirit guide, and I'm the mother of the heir to this empire." She pointed at the unconscious man in the bed. "You will handle your duties, or I will find people who can. Am I clear?" She looked at the man named Cruz. "And for those who betray this family, follow the standing protocols. I don't care how harsh they are. Execute the penalty." They left looking smaller than when they'd come in. That night, the chairman appeared in the doorway. The mask was gone. He looked at his unconscious son with something that might have been regret, if he were capable of that. "Who did this?" Amara demanded. "One of my lieutenants. He thought with Victor gone, he could take control." The chairman smiled. "He was wrong. I've already had him dealt with." "You mean killed." "I mean dealt with." He looked at her, and his expression was almost fond. "You're stronger than I thought. Good. You'll need that strength for what comes next." He glanced at his unconscious son. "Victor will wake up, and when he does, he'll go to war. The question is, will you be his weapon or his weakness?" Mara looked at Victor's still form, at the machines keeping him alive, at the future growing inside her. "I'll be whatever he needs me to be." The chairman's smile widened. "Good girl." 2 days later, Mara learned the lieutenant's name. Cruz. He'd been with the family for 20 years. Trusted, reliable, the chairman had his body left somewhere visible with a message for betraying the family. Mara had ordered it, and she felt nothing. The girl who had been a waitress just months ago was gone, burned away in fire and blood. In her place was someone harder, someone who could look at death and not flinch, someone who could survive in this world. When Victor finally woke on day 7, his first word was her name. His second was, the baby, safe, she promised, and kissed him like he was oxygen. "I heard you," he murmured against her lips. "When I was under, I heard everything you said. Then you know. I know you love me, and I know you ordered Cruz's death." His eyes held hers. "I'm proud of you and terrified for you, because once you cross that line, Mara, there's no going back." She thought about the girl she'd been, serving wine to people who never once looked at her face. She thought about Danny's locket, about promises made to the dead, about the life growing inside her that needed protection above everything else. "Good," she said. "I don't want to go back." 2 months of slow, agonizing recovery, and Victor was finally back in meetings, running things from his bed when the doctors wouldn't clear him for walking. Mara stayed close, played the devoted wife, all while feeling the pregnancy symptoms intensify. The baby was 14 weeks now, a small secret growing larger every day. She was reviewing the harbor contracts, because apparently she reviewed contracts now, when Victor woke from his afternoon rest. She moved to his side immediately, helped him sit up, adjusted his pillows. He caught her hand and pulled her down for a kiss that started gentle and quickly became something more urgent. The doctor said no strenuous activity. She murmured against his mouth, "The doctor can wait." His hand slid to her waist and she winced. He pulled back immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm just..." But his hand was already moving, finding the small swell of her stomach that was becoming impossible to hide. His eyes went wide. He stared at her like she held the secrets of the universe in her belly, and then he did something that broke her heart open. He smiled, actually smiled, real and unguarded and completely beautiful. "We're really having a baby. We really are." He pulled her down onto the bed beside him, careful of his injuries, and wrapped himself around her. "I'm going to be a father. You're going to be a mother." The bedroom door opened. The chairman stood in the frame. "Lucid, sharp, Victor, we need to discuss the federal situation." "Not now, father." "Yes, now." The old man's eyes flicked to Mara, and she saw the calculation behind them. "Unless you'd rather discuss it in front of your wife." Victor's jaw tightened. "Give us a moment." Mara rose, kissed Victor's forehead, and walked out, but she stayed close to the door. Because she had learned that survival meant knowing everyone's secrets. "The investigators are moving faster than expected," the chairman said. "They'll make arrests within the month. You need to prepare." "I am prepared." "Mara can't testify." "No, but she's becoming a distraction. You're soft around her, weak. I need you focused." "She's my wife, the mother of my child. She's a liability." The chairman's voice dropped to something cold. "Handle it, or I will." Mara backed away from the door, heart slamming. She knew what "handle it" meant in this world. She had two options, run or fight. That night, she packed a bag, just essentials, nothing that would be noticed. She planned to slip out during the early morning guard change, go to a shelter, claim what she needed to claim, disappear until the baby was born. But when she tried to leave her room at 4 in the morning, the door wouldn't open. She was locked in again. When dawn came, Mrs. Park appeared with breakfast and a message. "Mr. Kang is being transferred to the hospital for follow-up surgery. He asked that you stay here and rest." "I want to go with him. I'm afraid that's not possible." Doctor's orders. Mara was trapped again, but this time it felt different, more final. Later, Mrs. Park whispered as she collected the dinner tray. "The chairman has gone to the secure wing for his treatment. The cameras in your corridor are looping for the next 10 minutes. If anything is going to happen, it must happen now." Victor returned 3 days later. Mara waited in their bedroom, practicing what she'd say, how she'd explain her attempted escape. But when he walked through the door, something was terribly wrong. He looked at her with complete confusion. "Who are you?" The world stopped. "Victor, this isn't funny. I'm serious. Who the hell are you and why are you in my bedroom?" He turned to the guard behind him. "Get her out of here." "Sir, this is your wife." "My wife." He laughed. "It was cruel. I don't have a wife. I would never marry anyone like." He looked her up and down with undisguised disgust. "Get her out." "Give her money. I want her gone." Mara's legs gave out. "The baby, Victor. I'm carrying your baby. I don't know you." Flat, final. "I sure as hell never touched you." "Whatever game you're playing, it's over." They dragged her out, not gently. She fought, screamed his name, begged him to remember, but his expression never changed. The man who had held her, loved her, whispered promises against her skin. That man was gone. In his place was the monster everyone feared. They dropped her on the sidewalk outside the estate. As the guard shoved her toward the street, he pressed a heavy envelope into her hand, hidden from the cameras. "From the boss," the guard muttered, his cruelty dropping for just a split second. "Run." Mara stood on the Manhattan sidewalk at 9 in the evening. Inside the envelope was not just money. There was a burner phone, a key to a storage unit, and a note in hasty handwriting. "I'm sorry, Mara Adams, Mrs. Kang." Exactly 2 months stood on that sidewalk. 4 months pregnant, and felt her heart shatter into pieces too small to ever put back together. She walked, didn't know where, just walked, until her feet brought her to the only place that made sense. The restaurant where all of this had started. She stood across the street and stared at the elegant entrance and almost laughed at the cosmic joke of it all. Her hand drifted to the locket she still wore. Danny's locket. The chairman's locket, the key to everything. She pulled it open for the first time since Danny's death. Inside were two photographs, one of a young boy with kind eyes laughing at something off camera. The other was a map not detailed, just a simple line drawing of streets, an X marked in one spot, and characters she couldn't read. Mara had enough money for a cheap motel room and a translator app. She took a photo of the characters, ran them through, and the translation appeared, where father hid the evidence. Her breath stopped. Danny hadn't run from the family to escape. He had found something the chairman needed hidden, and that was why he died, and he had left the proof with the one person no one would ever suspect, his American girlfriend who couldn't read the language. Mara sat on the stained motel bedspread with one hand over her growing stomach and made a decision. If Victor had truly forgotten her, if that part of him was gone, then she had nothing left to lose. But she could make sure the monster who had orchestrated everything, who had killed Danny, who had threatened her child, finally faced consequences. She would find the evidence, and she would burn his kingdom to the ground. The motel room cost $40 a night, and Mara stretched her money as far as it would go while she planned. The map in the locket led to an address in Queens, a storage facility that had closed 5 years ago. Now just a rusted shell behind a chain-link fence. It wasn't a rental unit. It was a private shipping container purchased under a fake company name, paid up for 20 years. Danny had planned for the long game. She went at night, scaled the fence despite everything, found the unit marked on the map. The lock was rusty. She broke it with a rock and determination. Inside were boxes, documents, financial records proving the chairman's empire was built on illegal weapons dealing, extortion, and murder. Evidence that would bring down not just this family, but half the city's criminal infrastructure. Danny had been gathering proof, probably planning to go to the authorities right up until the chairman discovered his betrayal. Mara photographed everything with her phone. Then she called the only person she could think of, her old roommate from college who had become a journalist. "Maria, it's Mara. I have a story for you, but we need to meet somewhere public." Somewhere safe. They agreed on a coffee shop in Midtown. Noon the next day, Mara would hand over the evidence, Maria would run the story, and the chairman would finally face what he had built. Mara allowed herself to hope. She was walking back to the motel, cutting through the alley behind the restaurant, because apparently she couldn't help revisiting the scene of her own downfall. When she realized she was not alone, 3 men blocking both ends of the alley. Mrs. Kang, the center one, said she recognized him. One of the chairman's personal guards. "You've been difficult to track." "I don't go by that name anymore. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. You're carrying Kang blood." He pulled a knife and the streetlight caught the blade. "We can do this easy or we can do it hard. Either way, the baby comes with us." Mara's hand went to her stomach, protective, desperate. "Please, just let me go. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again." Not an option. Orders are orders. She tried to run. They were faster, trained for exactly this. Hands grabbed her arms, slammed her against the brick wall. The blade pressed cold against her throat, high enough to be lethal, far enough to protect what they actually wanted. Mara closed her eyes and whispered an apology to the child she had failed to protect. Then the world exploded into violence. A figure emerged from the rain, because of course it was raining now, because this entire disaster needed rain, and what followed wasn't a fight. It was a one-sided devastation. Victor moved like something that had decided to be death, each strike precise and absolute. The knife clattered to the wet pavement. Bodies followed. In 30 seconds it was over. The guards were down, and Victor stood in rain, blood mixing with water on his hands, his face, his clothes. He turned to Mara. His eyes were wild, feral, nothing like the empty confusion from before. "Did they hurt you?" She couldn't speak, couldn't process, just stared. He crossed to her, hands hovering over her body like he was afraid to touch, checking for injuries without making contact. "The baby is baby, you remember me." The words came out broken. "I never forgot you." His hands finally settled on her face, cradling it like something that could shatter. "I had to make you leave, Mara. My father knew I was investigating him, knew I was going to move against him. As long as you were in that building, you were a target. The amnesia was the only way to get you out without him suspecting. I needed him to believe you meant nothing to me." His voice cracked. "You threw me away. I saved your life. The words came out harsh, desperate. You and our baby. I couldn't protect you there, not with his eyes everywhere. But out here, where you were nothing to him, you were safe. Until he figured out you had the locket, that you knew about Danny. Then he sent them. How did you know where I was? I've had people watching you since the moment you left. Do you think I'd actually let you go? Let you face the world alone and pregnant with no resources? His laugh was short and bitter. I'm a monster, Mara, but I'm your monster. And I protect what's mine. She wanted to hit him, curse him, make him hurt the way she had been hurting. Instead, she kissed him with all the rage and relief and love that had been tearing her apart. He kissed her back like drowning, like salvation, arms wrapping around her tight. Careful, she whispered, the stomach. They stood in the rain, surrounded by what he had done, and made promises that tasted like blood. We're ending this. Victor said against her mouth, tonight. My father's reign ends tonight. I have evidence, everything Danny collected. I know. I've been building my own case for months. He pulled back enough to look at her. But evidence brings courts and lawyers and trials. That's not how this family works. Then how? His smile was blade, sharp. We take it all. Every territory, every lieutenant, every connection. We don't destroy the empire, Mara. We claim it. Together, she thought about the girl who had served wine, who had been kind to trembling old men, who had believed in redemption. That girl was dead, gone somewhere in the fire and blood and rain. What do I have to do? The estate at midnight was a different creature. Mara and Victor entered through the service entrance, the one place the chairman's surveillance had a blind spot, a gap from decades ago that Danny had discovered and never shared with anyone except his brother. Victor moved like a ghost through his own home, Mara following close. They gathered allies first, guards who had served under Victor for years, loyal to him rather than to his father. Quiet conversations in dark corners. Promises made and kept. By 2 a.m, they had 12 people, enough. The chairman was in his study. Predictably, the old man never slept. He just sat in his chair like a spider at the center of a web, watching screens and making calls. Victor and Mara entered without knocking. The chairman looked up, his face split into a smile. Victor, you remembered. How touching. His gaze slid to Mara, and you brought the pregnant one. Even better. It's over, Father. Victor's voice was very still. I know about the illegal trading. The murders, what you did to Danny. Danny was weak. He would have destroyed everything I built. The chairman stood and his hand was steady, holding a gun that seemed to appear from nowhere. Just like you're weak, letting a woman make you soft. Make you question. I'm not questioning anything. Victor stepped forward and 6 weapons clicked behind him, all pointed at the chairman. I know exactly what needs to happen. The chairman's laugh was genuine, delighted. You're going to kill your own father, after everything I taught you. No. Mara stepped forward and every eye in the room turned to her. We're not killing you. That would be mercy. The chairman's smile faltered. We're committing you. Mara continued, to a care facility. You'll be diagnosed with advanced mental decline, a danger to yourself. And you'll spend the rest of your days exactly as you pretended to be. Confused, helpless. Trapped in a mind that no longer works. Understanding dawned in the chairman's eyes, followed immediately by fury. You can't. I already have. Victor held up a tablet. 2 doctors have signed off. The paperwork is filed. Transport arrives in 1 hour. The chairman swung his gun toward Mara. Then I'll kill her and the child she's carrying. If I can't have my empire, Mara spoke. Her voice carried across the room clear and calm. Grandfather. Find the light. The family words, the words Danny used to say to him when he was young, before the monster consumed the man. The chairman's hand trembled. For just a moment, real confusion crossed his face, not the mask, real confusion. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Mara pulled the trigger. Not to kill, to the shoulder, exactly as they had planned. The gun fell from his hand. He collapsed. With a cry of shock and pain. That's for Danny, she said quietly, and for every life you destroyed to build your kingdom. The transport came, medical people who asked no questions because they were paid not to. They loaded the chairman onto a stretcher and sedated him when he started screaming about empires and betrayal. His last words as they wheeled him out, "You'll become me, Victor." You'll see, power corrupts, and you're already corrupted. That child will doom you both. Then he was gone. The Empire needed a leader. The lieutenants gathered at dawn, expecting Victor to take his father's chair. Instead, he and Mara walked into the conference room together, his hand on the small of her back, her head held high. Victor gestured to the head of the table. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce your new boss. Mara sat in Chairman's chair, the one that had held power for 40 years. She placed her old restaurant name tag on the mahogany surface, a reminder of where she came from, who she had been. I know what you're thinking, she said, looking at each face in turn. Who is this woman, this outsider? She smiled. This waitress who thinks she can run an empire. Silence. I'm the woman who kept the chairman manageable for months. Who learned your codes, your networks, your weak points while serving you tea. I'm the woman who carries the heir to this family. Her hand rested on her stomach. And I'm the woman who's going to drag this organization out of the shadows and into something resembling a future. Not because I'm good, but because I'm smart enough to know the old ways are dying. One of the older lieutenants stood, and if we refuse. Victor stepped forward. The threat was in his bones. Then you'll meet the same fate as Cruz. Choose, one by one, they bent the knee. The next 6 months were a brutal education in power. Mara learned to speak the language of this world without flinching, to make decisions she once would have found unthinkable, to sleep at night despite the weight on her hands. The federal case collapsed without the chairman to target. The legal protection held. The empire shifted under Mara's guidance, still dangerous, but more strategic, more careful. The illegal arms trading ended. The most brutal enforcers were quietly retired. Not redemption exactly, but evolution. Her daughter was born on a cold January morning. Victor held her with tears streaming down his face, and Mara watched her husband become human again in the presence of this tiny, perfect creature. They named her Danny for the uncle she would never meet. The epilogue came 1 year later. They had moved to a small seaside village on an island, not running, just stepping back, letting the lieutenants handle day-to-day while Mara and Victor raised their daughter far from the darkness. The bar they opened was small and intimate. Mara served drinks with the same grace she'd once served wine to people. Never saw her, but now they saw her. Everyone did. She was changing Danny's diaper when the letter arrived. Heavy paper, sealed with a stamp she recognized immediately, the family crest. Inside, a single photograph. Their bar taken from across the street. No words, no threats, just proof. He knew where they were. Victor loaded a weapon while bouncing the baby on his hip, his face grim. He escaped or was released. Mara looked at the horizon, the perfect blue of the sea, and felt the shadows creeping back at the edges. What do? We survive, like always. He kissed Danny's head, but this time we do it together. The shadows were waiting. They were always waiting, but so were they. Morning came with a soft knock. Mara jolted awake in the Tooth, oft bed, disoriented by silk sheets and the strange absence of traffic noise. For 1/2 second, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back, and with it the full weight of her new reality. A woman stood in the doorway, mid-50s, her face professionally neutral. She introduced herself as Mrs. Park, the estate manager, and proceeded to explain the household rules with clinical efficiency. The estate doctor would visit within the hour for a mandatory health screening. Breakfast at 7, the chairman's medication schedule, appropriate attire for different occasions. The rooms that were off limits, which turned out to be most of them. The door was locked last night. Mara said. Mrs. Park's expression did not flicker. For your safety, Miss Adams, the estate has many security protocols. Protocols that lock me in. Protocols that keep dangers out. Her gaze sharpened. Mr. Kang has many enemies. You are under his protection now. That means following his rules. Chairman Kang was waiting in the breakfast room, seated at a table that could have hosted 20, but held only 2 place settings. He looked different in the morning light, smaller, frailer, the tremor in his hands more visible. When he saw Mara, his face transformed with something that looked like childlike joy. My child, he murmured. Mara slipped into the role like putting on a costume. She bowed, spoke in gentle, careful words, helped him with his tea. He told her rambling stories about his past, about his childhood. about sons who disappointed him and sons who left. His words wandered in circles, doubling back on themselves, and anyone listening would have heard only the confusion of an old man lost in his own mind. But Mara watched his eyes. His eyes were calculating, sharp, tracking every single move she made with quiet predatory focus. Later, when she helped him to his room for his afternoon rest, he grabbed her wrist with sudden, vicious strength. The trembling vanished completely. "You have his eyes," he said. "Perfect, unaccented English. My youngest son's eyes, kind eyes, lying eyes." Then the confusion returned like a curtain dropping, and he was shuffling and weak again, asking for his blanket. Mara's blood went cold. That night, unable to sleep, she explored the edges of her cage. The penthouse was a maze of hallways and locked doors, but eventually she found the library. 2 stories of books, leather chairs, a fireplace that looked like it had never once been used. She was reaching for a book when a voice cut through the silence. "Can't sleep." She spun around. Victor stood in the doorway, jacket gone. Shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked here and there with old scars. He held a crystal glass of amber liquid, and his hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. "I'm not used to this," she said, gesturing at the opulence surrounding them. "No, you're used to struggling." He moved into the room, and Mara found herself backing up until her spine met the bookshelf. He noticed, and something predatory flickered in his expression. "You're afraid of me again? I thought we were past that." "We're not past anything. You bought me. I bought your debts. There's a difference." He took a sip of his drink, eyes never leaving hers. "Though I'll admit the line is blurry. Why am I really here, Victor? Because my father won't let you go. No, the real reason." He set his glass down on a side table. Then he was moving toward her, each step slow and deliberate, giving her time to step away. She couldn't. He stopped when they were close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, could smell the whiskey and something darker underneath. Rage, maybe, or hunger. "You want the truth." His voice dropped to gravel. "My father is playing a game I don't understand. You're a piece on a board I can't see, and I hate not knowing the rules." His hand came up and Mara's breath caught, but he only reached past her to pull a book off the shelf. His arm brushed her shoulder and electricity arced between them. "But every time I see you with him, I feel something I haven't felt in years." "What?" He looked at the book in his hand, leather, bound poetry, and something vulnerable cracked through his armor. Relief, like maybe there's still something in this family worth saving. He held out the book and their fingers touched. Neither pulled away. Danny used to read from this. He was the only one of us who still believed in beauty. Mara's throat tightened. "He talked about you, not by name, but he said he had a brother who carried the weight of the world because no one else could." Victor's jaw clenched. "He left us, chose death over family. He chose freedom over prison. There's a difference, is there?" His thumb stroked slowly across her knuckles, and the touch was so gentle it almost hurt. "Because right now you're in a prison, Mara. A beautiful one, but still a cage, and I'm the warden." He leaned closer, and she could see small flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel his breath against her cheek. "But I wonder who's really trapped, you or me, watching you on those monitors, unable to stop thinking about the way you stood between my father and danger without a second thought. Victor, I shouldn't want you. You're everything I can't afford to want, but God help me, I do." His hand cupped her face, rough palm against soft skin. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong." It was wrong, completely, utterly wrong. But when she opened her eyes, what she said was, "I'm not afraid of you." His control shattered. He kissed her like drowning, like salvation, like violence wrapped in silk. His mouth claimed hers with bruising intensity, and Mara met him with equal force, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He groaned against her lips, backing her harder into the bookshelf, and the poetry book tumbled to the floor. Forgotten. Then he wrenched himself away, breathing hard, eyes wild. "This is a mistake." "Then why did you kiss me?" "Because I'm damned either way." He picked up his abandoned drink and drained it in one swallow. "Go to bed, Mara, before I do something we'll both regret." She went. But sleep was impossible. She lay in the dark, fingers touching her swollen lips, wondering if Danny had warned his brother about her, if that was why Victor fought his own feelings with such desperate force. Across the estate, in a room Mara had never seen, Chairman Kang sat in front of a bank of monitors. He watched his son pace the library like a caged animal, watched the waitress toss and turn in her bed, unable to rest. He smiled, and the confused old man vanished completely from his eyes. "Found you," he whispered to the image of Mara's locket, frozen on one of the screens. "Now let's see if you survive what comes next." 3 weeks passed in a strange, suspended reality. Mara cared for the chairman during the day, listening to his rambling stories, helping with meals, watching him play the confused elder with unsettling perfection. And at night, she avoided Victor with equal determination, though she felt his presence everywhere, a gravity pulling at her even through walls, until the night he appeared at her door at midnight, dressed in a full suit, holding out his hand, "Come with me." Mara stood in her sleep clothes, confusion warring with something dangerously close to anticipation. Somewhere my father's eyes can't reach. His expression was unreadable. "Trust me, just this once." She shouldn't have. But she took his hand. The rooftop garden was a secret paradise 30 floors above the city's chaos. Fairy lights strung between trellises, exotic flowers blooming despite the season, a view that made the whole city look like scattered diamonds on black velvet. A table set with silver and crystal, candles flickering in the breeze. "What is this?" Mara breathed. "An apology for the cage, for the monitors, for stealing your life." Victor pulled out her chair and leaned close enough to whisper against her ear. "For wanting you when I have no right." The meal was intimate and charged with everything they weren't saying. He asked about her childhood, her mother's illness, the dreams she'd quietly set aside when reality got too heavy. And slowly, impossibly, the terrifying boss dissolved into something more human. A man who'd inherited an empire at 19 when his father declined, who'd made choices that haunted him, who carried scars both visible and not. "I never wanted this life," he admitted, wine loosening his carefully guarded words. "But Danny ran and someone had to hold it all together. So I became the monster our father trained me to be." "You're not a monster." "You don't know what I've done, Mara, the people I've hurt, the orders I've given." His hand found hers across the table. "But when I'm with you, I remember what it felt like to be human." He stood and gently pulled her to her feet, leading her to the rooftop's edge. The city sprawled below them, a living, breathing thing made of light and shadow. "There's trouble coming," he said quietly. "Federal trouble. They've been building a case against the family for years, and they're close to making moves." He turned to her, and his eyes held something she'd never seen in them before. "Fear, if you testify against me, even unknowingly, everything falls apart." "I wouldn't. I know, but I need to make sure." He took both her hands, his grip gentle but desperate. "Marry me, Mara." The world tilted. "What? Marry me, be my wife. Let me protect you the only way I know how." He pulled a ring from his pocket, a black diamond set in platinum, dark as his eyes, as the secrets that bound them together. "I'm not asking for love. I'm asking for survival, yours and mine." It was insane, impossible. Everything about it was wrong, the speed, the circumstances, the man himself. But Mara looked at his face, at the vulnerability he was offering like an open wound, and heard herself say yes. The wedding was a quiet affair in the estate's chapel, witnessed only by Mrs. Park and 2 guards Victor trusted completely. Mara wore a dress that had appeared in her closet, white silk that fit her perfectly, elegant and understated. Victor wore black as always, but when he saw her walk in, his eyes held something close to reverence. The vows were traditional, spoken in 2 languages. When it came time to kiss the bride, Victor cupped her face with both hands, thumbs stroking her cheekbones, and kissed her with devastating tenderness. This wasn't the desperate, hungry collision from the library. This was a promise, a claim, a surrender. The wedding night began with champagne and low lighting in the master suite. floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The bed dominated the space, massive and draped in silver silk. Victor poured 2 glasses and handed her one, their fingers brushing and neither pulling away. "You're my wife now," he said, and the word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he was testing its weight. "That means something to me, more than you know. What does it mean to you?" He set his glass down and moved closer. "It means you're mine and I don't share." His fingers found the zipper at her back and pulled it down with agonizing slowness. The dress whispered to the floor, his breath hitched. "Mara," she silenced him with a kiss, rising up to reach him, her hands working the buttons of his shirt. He groaned into her mouth and lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around him as he carried her to the bed. What followed was incendiary, a collision of desperate need and careful restraint, his hands mapping her like territory to conquer and worship at the same time. He was surprisingly gentle, attentive to every gasp, learning her with focused intensity. When they finally came together, it felt like completion, like 2 broken pieces forming something whole. Afterward, they lay tangled in silk sheets, Mara's head on Victor's chest, his fingers tracing slow patterns on her shoulder. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear. "I could get used to this," she murmured, his hand stilled. "Mara, we could leave, you know. Take my father somewhere quiet, let the empire fall. It's not that simple. Why not?" She lifted her head to look at him, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. "Victor." He sat up, pulling away from her. Suddenly there was distance between them that had nothing to do with physical space. He reached for his pants, pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands, walked to the window. His back to her, smoke curling into shadows. "The federal investigators are building a case," he said, each word careful. "A case that could put me away for life. They'll come after everyone close to me, try to flip them, force testimony." He took a drag, exhaled slowly. "Spousal protection means you can't be compelled to testify against me. Even if they arrest you, even if they pressure you, you cannot be forced to speak." Ice flooded Mara's veins. "What are you saying, this marriage?" His voice was flat, emotionless, the cold boss mask sliding back into place. "Is a legal strategy, a protection from being called to testify. That's why I proposed, Mara, not because I love you, because I need you silent." The words hit like physical blows. Mara grabbed the sheet, wrapped it around herself, suddenly feeling exposed in ways that had nothing to do with clothes. "You're lying. I wish I was." He finally turned, and his eyes were empty, dead. "What just happened between us was pleasant, but it doesn't change the reality. You're an asset, and I'm protecting my assets. That's all this is. Get out. This is my room. Get out." The scream tore from her throat, raw and broken. He left without another word, and Mara collapsed onto the bed that still smelled like him, like them, and sobbed into silk pillows that muffled nothing. She had been so stupid, so naive, thinking someone like him could change, that she could be the one to reach him. She had sold her soul for a legal loophole, and the worst part, she still loved him. The nausea hit 3 weeks after the wedding. Mara barely made it to the bathroom before her stomach emptied, leaving her shaking and cold on the marble floor. She told herself it was stress, grief, the weight of living inside a beautiful lie. But when it happened again the next morning, and the next, she could not keep denying the truth. She was pregnant. The realization brought no joy, only cold terror. She was carrying the child of a man who had used her, married her as a legal shield, and now she was bound to him in ways that went far beyond any ring. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, with one hand pressed to her still, flat stomach, and wanted to scream. She couldn't tell Victor, not yet, maybe not ever. That night, unable to sleep, Mara drifted through the estate's dark hallways. The security had relaxed over the past weeks. She'd proven herself quiet and compliant, a good little prisoner. She moved through shadows, and that is when she heard it, the chairman's voice, sharp and clear and completely unslurred by confusion. Mara pressed herself against the wall outside his study, heart hammering, and listened. "I don't care about the judge's connections. He's blocking the harbor deal. Handle it. Make it clean. A pause. No, not an accident. I want his family to know it was us. Send a message. Horror crawled up Mara's spine. This was the chairman's voice, but not the confused, wandering elder she had been caring for. This was steel and cold menace. The voice of a man who ordered deaths over breakfast and the federal investigation. The chairman continued, "Let them come. My son married the girl exactly as I knew he would. The legal protection is in play. They have nothing." Mara's breath caught in her throat. "The girl doesn't suspect. She thinks I'm confused, that she's here out of kindness." A dark chuckle. "Foolish child, but she serves her purpose, speaking the family words, carrying the locket. She's the perfect bait. My youngest son's last gift before I disposed of him. Disposed of him. Not overdose, disposed." Mara backed away from the door with one hand clamped over her mouth to hold in the gasp that was trying to tear free. She needed to run, to escape, but her body would not cooperate. She made it back to her room, locked the door, and spent the rest of the night planning an escape that had no exit. Morning brought the chairman's routine. Breakfast, medication, gentle conversation. Mara played her role, smiled and bowed and spoke soft, careful words, while her mind screamed. The old man watched her with warm eyes, trembling hands reaching for her help, and she wanted to shatter the teacup over his head. "Such a good girl," he murmured, patting her hand. "My light in the darkness." Later, when she helped him to his room for his afternoon rest, he gripped her wrist, not with the vicious strength from before, but gently. Almost like a grandfather. "You're pale, my dear. Are you well?" "Just tired." His eyes sharpened, just for a heartbeat. "You should rest more. Take care of yourself. You're eating for two now." Ice in her veins. "What?" The confusion returned like clouds covering the sun. What did I say?" He looked around, bewildered. "Where is my tea? I asked for tea." Mara fled. She locked herself in her bathroom, pulled up her shirt, stared at her flat stomach. He couldn't know. It was impossible. She had only just realized herself, unless he'd been monitoring her that closely. Watching everything, the knock on her bedroom door made her jump. "Miss Adams, the chairman wishes to see you in his study." Mara walked to the study like a condemned person walking to judgment. And when she entered, the chairman sat behind his massive desk, the picture of a confused elderly man, except for his eyes. His eyes were predator, sharp. "Sit." She sat. "You're carrying my grandchild." He said it as fact, not question. "I can always tell. I watched my wife through 2 pregnancies. You have the look, pale, tired, glowing underneath the fear." He pulled a folder from his desk and opened it. Medical records, blood work she had never authorized. "I have people everywhere, including your doctor's office. The test came back positive 3 days ago. You've been too scared to check." Mara couldn't breathe. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm changing my will." He slid a legal document across the desk. "This child you carry is the future. I'm cutting Victor out. Everything goes to the baby. You can't. I can do whatever I please. This is my empire." He leaned forward, and the mask dropped completely. Victor was always too soft, like Danny. But this child, born of necessity and strategy, will be shaped from birth to lead. And you, dear girl, will raise it for me. No. He smiled. It was the expression of something cold that had learned to imitate warmth. "You think you have a choice? You're in my home, surrounded by my people, married to my son under my design. Every move you've made since walking into that restaurant has been choreographed by me." He stood and walked around the desk with surprisingly steady steps. No tremor, no weakness. "You carry the future inside you. Try to run and I'll take it from you. Try to tell Victor and I'll have you committed. Who would believe you, the paranoid waitress claiming the confused old man is the real power?" He gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You're mine now, Mara. Body, soul, and everything else. Accept it." He released her and returned to his desk. The confusion came back like a costume being put on. "Why are you crying, my dear? Did I upset you?" "Oh, I'm such a foolish old man. Please have some tea." Mara ran. She made it to her room, locked the door, slid down to the floor with her back against it. Her hands wrapped around her stomach, protective, instinctive. and she whispered desperate promises to the tiny life growing inside her. "I'll get us out, somehow, I promise." But the walls were closing in, and she knew the terrible truth. She was caught inside a web, spun by someone who had been playing chess, while everyone else played checkers. And she had just become the most valuable piece on the board. Mara avoided Victor for 3 days after the chairman's revelation. Easy enough in an estate this size, but the pregnancy was getting harder to ignore, the exhaustion, the nausea, the way she caught herself touching her stomach when she thought no one was watching. She needed to tell him. Not about his father, she couldn't prove anything, but about the baby. He deserved to know, even if he had only married her as a legal shield. She found him in his office late at night, surrounded by paperwork and the blue glow of multiple screens. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened before he could stop it. "Mara, we need to talk." She shook her head when he gestured to a chair. Some conversations required being able to stand, required the ability to move if you needed to. "I'm pregnant." The words hung between them like smoke. Victor went absolutely still. The color drained from his face. "What?" "I'm pregnant. About 5 weeks, I think." Her hands twisted together. "I know this complicates." "Stop." He stood, came around the desk, and before she could step back, his hands were on her face, tilting her head up. "You're carrying my child." "Yes." Something fierce and possessive blazed in his eyes. "Then nothing is complicated. You're my wife. This is my child. That's all that matters." "But you said." "Forget what I said." His thumb brushed her cheekbone and his voice dropped to something raw. "I lied, Mara. I married you for the legal protection, yes, but that's not why I wanted you. I wanted you because you make me remember what it's like to be human, because I am completely, obsessively in love with you, and I didn't know how to say it without terrifying you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "And now you're carrying my baby, and I—" The office door burst open. One of Victor's people, face white with panic. "Sir, we need to move now. There's been a breach." The explosion cut off his words. The world became noise and fire and flying glass. Victor's body slammed into Mara's, driving her to the ground, his weight crushing and protective at the same time. She felt him jerk, heard his grunt of pain, and then there was only ringing silence and the smell of burning. "Victor!" Her voice came out wrong, distant. She touched his back, and her hand came away red. He rolled off her, and she could see the shrapnel in his shoulder, his side blood spreading across his white shirt like dark, blooming flowers. "Get up," he gasped. "Car bomb. They're coming. Get up." More explosions rocked the building. Gunfire echoed from somewhere below. Mara grabbed his arm, and together they stumbled toward the panic room she'd been shown during her first week. The lieutenant who had burst through the door was dead in the hallway. They didn't make it to the panic room. More guards appeared, loyal ones. That Thursday evening, something shifted inside that restaurant. Not a full stop, more like that quiet pressure drop you feel right before a storm rolls in. He walked in and the whole room changed without anyone saying a word. He was older than most people there, probably in his 70s. Silver hair combed back neat and clean. His face had that look, like it used to be kind once, a long time ago, before years and hard choices carved it into something else entirely. His hands shook a little as he walked. His fancy gray suit hung just a tiny bit too loose on his body. He did not look like a monster, and that right there, that was the first lie. The host walked him to the corner booth like he knew exactly who this man was, not guessing, knowing. 2 big guys in dark suits took spots near the door, their hands never fully relaxed, their eyes never fully stopped moving. The old man lowered himself into the leather seat and reached for his wine glass. That is when it happened. The glass tilted. Red wine splashed across his white silk shirt and spread out slow, like blood soaking into fresh snow. His hand jerked back, shaking worse now, and something flashed across his face, not embarrassment, fear. The restaurant pretended not to notice. Every conversation kept going at the exact same volume. Forks touched plates with the same careful little clicks. But eyes watched. Eyes always watched. A younger server walked over, keeping his voice professional and calm. "Sir, let me." The old man's mouth moved. Words came out soft and rushed, tumbling out in a voice that cracked like something raw and broken. The server froze, smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't." More words, faster now. The old man's fingers clutched at the napkin, pressing it against the stain, but his movements were all wrong. Uncoordinated, like his body had forgotten how to cooperate. His breathing got faster. The manager appeared with a diplomatic smile already in place. "Sir, if you'll allow us to," he gestured toward the exit. The message was clear. This act had worn out its welcome. The security guard materialized next. All 240 pounds of him, hand already moving toward the old man's shoulder. That is when the old man went completely rigid. His eyes went wide. His pupils blew open. His whole body locked up into this absolute stillness, the kind that comes from old trauma, from muscle memory built around surviving. The guard's fingers were inches away. "Don't touch him." Every head nearby turned at once. Mara and David stood near the service station. Mara had one hand gripping her order pad so hard the paper was wrinkling. Her other hand was already reaching for a clean napkin. 24 years old, hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her dark skin caught the warm golden light of the restaurant. She had worked there for 8 months, kept her head down, came in early, stayed late, never inserted herself into anything above her pay grade. Until now, she moved between the guard and the old man before anyone could stop her. Her whole body said none, threatening, but also absolutely certain. She bent her knees slightly, bringing herself down to eye level with the trembling man, and then she did something that would change everything. She bowed, not a quick nod, a full, slow, respectful bow, the kind that takes practice to make look natural. Then she spoke. Her voice was gentle. Her words were accented but clear. "Grandfather, the stain is just a shadow. Let me help you find the light." The restaurant might as well have stopped breathing. The old man's eyes locked onto her face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, impossibly, his eyes filled with tears. He reached out with shaking hands, not for the napkin she was offering, but for her wrist. He grabbed it with a desperate strength that did not match how fragile he looked. "How?" he whispered. "How do you know that?" Mara's heart was hammering, but she kept her voice steady. She gently pulled the soaked napkin from his grip and replaced it with a clean one, guiding his hand to press it against the stain. "It's all right," she said softly. "I'm right here." The manager stood frozen, his practiced cool completely shattered. The guard had taken 3 steps back, uncertainty coming off him in waves. The 2 men by the entrance had gone wire, tight, hands moving toward the inside of their jackets. That is when the main doors opened. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Victor Kang did not walk into a room. He invaded it. 36 years old, 6 foot, 2 of controlled, coiled danger wrapped in a black suit that cost more than Mara's monthly rent. His dark hair swept back with precision, his jaw sharp enough to cut, and his eyes God. His eyes were the kind of dark that did not reflect light. They just absorbed it. Those eyes found his father first. Then they found the woman kneeling beside him, holding his hand. The world narrowed to that single moment. Victor's expression did not change. Somehow that was worse than rage. He crossed the restaurant in long, predatory strides. His people flanked him, but he did not need them. The threat lived in his bones, in the way every single person's survival instinct quietly screamed run when he got close. He stopped 3 feet from the table. He looked at his father's tear-streaked face. He looked at the ruined shirt. He looked at Mara. "Who are you?" His English was perfect, his accent barely there, but the question landed like a blade being set down on a table. Mara stood slowly. She forced herself to meet those dark, absorbing eyes. "Mara Adams, I'm a server here." Your father was speaking in a language none of the other staff understood. Victor's gaze never left her face. How convenient. "I was helping. Were you?" He stepped closer. She could smell expensive cologne mixed with something darker underneath. Gunpowder maybe, or fear, but hers, not his. My father has a condition, confusion. People who take advantage of that confusion tend to disappear. The old man's grip tightened on Mara's wrist. He spoke rapidly, fast and urgent, and almost childlike in his insistence. Victor's eyes flickered with something Mara could not quite read. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. He responded in a sharp, clipped tone. The old man shook his head violently and pulled Mara closer, speaking even faster. He says he won't leave without you. Victor's voice was completely flat, just stating a problem that needed solving. He says you spoke the family words, that you're his guide. A pause that hummed with menace. Where did you learn that phrase? Mara's throat went dry. My ex-boyfriend taught me some of the language. I was trying to calm him down. He taught me a poem about shadows and light. I added the word for stain because I remembered it from a commercial. I was improvising. Your ex-boyfriend. Victor pulled out his phone, typed something with sharp, efficient movements. A name? I don't see how that's a name now. Danny Kang. But he died 3 years ago, so I don't see why. Victor's fingers stopped moving. His face, already unreadable, became something carved from stone. The silence stretched so long that Mara could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. When he finally spoke again, his voice was soft, deadly soft. Danny Kang was my brother. The restaurant tilted. He ran from the family 7 years ago. We were told he died of an overdose in another city. Victor leaned down until Mara could see her own reflection in those dark eyes. You're telling me you knew him, that he taught you our family's private motto. I didn't know it was. What else did he teach you? What else did he tell you about us? Nothing. We dated for 6 months. He taught me some phrases because I wanted to learn. He died and I kept studying because I promised him I would, that's all. Victor studied her like she was a math problem that did not add up. Then he looked at his father, who had stopped crying but was clutching Mara's hand like a lifeline. How much? Victor asked. I'm sorry. How much money will it take for you to come with us and care for my father until he stabilizes? The manager appeared at Mara's elbow, face pale. Mr. Kang, I assure you our staff is not. I'm not asking her employer. I'm asking her. Victor pulled out his wallet. Extracted a black card. Name your price. Mara should have said no. Should have walked away from the trembling old man and his terrifying son. Should have gone back to her tables, her tips, her normal life of polite smiles and people who looked right through her. But she looked at the old man's face, at the desperate hope sitting in those ancient eyes, and something cracked open inside her chest. She thought about Danny, who died alone, about promises made to people who never came home. I have student loans, she heard herself say. And my mother's medical bills, 80,000 total. Victor did not blink. Done, but not 80, 500,000. The room spun. What? You calmed down one of the most feared men in this city. You spoke words you should not know. You're either the best actress I've ever seen or you're telling the truth. His smile was razor thin. Either way, you're too valuable to leave in a restaurant. He turned to the manager. Bill her final wages to this card. She no longer works here. Sir, you can't just. I can, I did. Victor glanced at the manager once and the man physically flinched. Unless you'd like to negotiate. The manager stepped back. No, sir, no negotiation necessary. Mara's head was spinning. I need time to think. No. Victor gestured to one of his people, who came forward with a tablet. A contract appeared on screen dense with legal text. You think while you read. Sign here. You'll live in our family home. Care for my father. In return, every debt you have disappears. Refuse. He leaned close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him, could see the tiny scar above his left eyebrow. And you walk out that door right now with nothing. He paused. But my father won't let go of your hand, and when I have to forcibly remove you, he'll spiral. So really, Mara, the question is how much your conscience is worth. It was blackmail dressed up as opportunity, a cage painted gold. Mara looked at the contract, at the old man watching her with desperate, ancient eyes, at her own reflection in the tablet's dark screen. She signed. Victor's smile was victorious and completely joyless. Welcome to the family, Miss Adams. He snapped his fingers and a bodyguard appeared with a sleek black coat, draping it over her shoulders. The car is waiting. The ride to the estate was a study in contrasts. Mara's cramped studio apartment could have fit inside the back seat of the SUV with room to spare. The leather was butter, soft. The temperature was perfectly controlled. The windows were so dark she could not see out, a rolling sensory deprivation chamber on wheels. The old man, she now knew his name was Chairman Kang, sat beside her, his hand still clutching hers with surprising strength for someone supposedly fragile. He murmured softly, fragments of sentences that sounded like prayers or confessions. Mara caught words here and there, sun, shadow, light, forgiveness, but could not piece them into anything whole. Victor sat across from them, silent, watching, always watching. His gaze felt like a physical weight on her skin, and she became hyper, aware of everything. The way her uniform shirt pulled across her shoulders, the rapid pulse at her throat, the small silver locket hidden under her collar. She touched it through the fabric, a nervous habit she'd had since Danny gave it to her. Victor noticed. Of course he noticed. What's that, a locket? It was a gift from Danny, not a question, a statement that landed like a punch. Show me. Amara's hand tightened protectively over her chest. It's personal. Nothing is personal anymore, Miss Adams. You signed that away when you took my check. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the space between them simply evaporated. Show me, or I'll take it. She believed him. Slowly, she drew the chain out from under her collar. The locket was small, silver, tarnished with age, engraved with characters she had never been able to translate. Danny had always changed the subject when she asked what they meant. Victor's expression shattered completely. He reached out and Mara flinched, but he only lifted the locket with surprising gentleness, turning it to catch the dim interior light. His jaw worked like he was chewing on glass. Where did you get this? I told you. Danny gave it to me. This locket belonged to my grandmother. It was buried with my brother. His eyes lifted to hers and they were void, black, emptied of everything except cold fury. So either you're a grave robber or my brother gave you our family's most sacred piece before he died. He released the locket. It fell back against her skin like ice, which means he trusted you, loved you maybe. His voice dropped to something barely audible. That makes you either very dangerous or very useful. I haven't decided which. He leaned in until his voice was nothing but breath. Hide it under your shirt. If my father sees that silver, he'll react badly before we reach the building. Keep it hidden, Mara, always. The estate was a fortress wearing a disguise. 30 floors of steel and glass overlooking Manhattan. Every window reinforced. Every entrance monitored. Mara counted 6 security checkpoints before they reached the top level, each guard armed, each one nodding with military precision as Victor passed. The penthouse itself was a study in minimalism and menace, white marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. Furniture that looked like it belonged behind velvet ropes in a museum. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces. Nothing soft, nothing warm. Victor led her down a hallway that seemed to stretch forever, their footsteps echoing. He stopped at a door, withdrew a key card, and gestured her inside. Your room. It was larger than her entire apartment. A king bed with white silk sheets, a marble bathroom with gold fixtures, a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in her exact size. A cage, but a gilded one. The clothes are for you, Victor said from the doorway. Tomorrow morning, someone will come to brief you on my father's routine. You'll accompany him to meals, to his medical appointments, to wherever he needs to go. You will not leave this building. Without my permission, you will not contact anyone from your previous life. You will not speak to the other staff about family business. He paused, and something that looked almost like regret crossed his face. And you will not try to escape. Why not? He pulled the door closed. She heard the lock engage from the outside. His voice came through the wood, muffled but perfectly clear. Because I'm not ready to decide what to do with you yet. Mara stood alone in her beautiful prison, the signed contract still somewhere in the back of her mind, and wondered if Danny had felt this same trapped. suffocating fear before he died.